So we have someone who's not on the schedule who will be speaking now. This is a very late addition to the program. Last year, we had Maria Corina Machado from Venezuela, who was at the time in hiding, talking to us about a month before the election. And she told us that she was hopeful. She said, we're going to win the election in Venezuela against Nicolás Maduro, which is something that is kind of unthinkable, given that dictatorships usually have a certain set of rules, and they don't really play by those rules when it comes to free and fair elections. And yet, we asked her, how can we help? What can we do from this community? Some of you were here last year. You remember we asked her, what can we do? And she said, well, just support us. We have certain needs. So this community came forward, and we purchased for her, in terms of democratic integrity, to support a clean election. We purchased 160-something Starlinks. These Starlinks were then moved into Venezuela through Colombia. We made sure that all of them arrived, and they were placed in strategic areas so that they could monitor the election, get the bills of record, the places where in each of the electoral locations they would have one QR code with how many votes were had. So they had their own vote tallies and their own counting rooms. We had generators and Starlinks. And of course, as expected, the government of Venezuela, the dictatorship, pulled the plug on electricity. They shut down the internet to make sure that this sort of activity wouldn't happen. Yet Maria Corina Machado had hundreds of thousands of volunteers placed in electoral locations throughout the country. And the results of the election in this huge struggle was a massive victory. This victory, where they got more than twice as many votes for the candidate that was standing in for her, because she, of course, was disqualified. So she then chose a grandmother to stand in her place, and they disqualified the grandmother. So she then chose a grandfather to stand in her place. They didn't disqualify him because they figured if we keep disqualifying, we're going to end up with no one in the country, because it was just going to continue. If the bills of record, just so have an idea of it, they look like this. And so with these bills of record, in every single location, signed by 5 witnesses, they collected all of them. The dictatorship did not know that they were doing this. So at the end of the day, the dictatorship, instead of actually carrying out frauds at the actual locations, they just invented a number and published that number. And that victory does not include the extraordinary numbers of Venezuelans who exiled themselves, who escaped the dictatorship. And they number 9 million people. 9 million Venezuelans left the country. They voted with their feet. So if you include, of those 9 million, and you think of how many of them were voting age, assuming that they would, of course, vote against the dictatorship because they just left, the actual number of Venezuelans who support Maduro, just electorally, it's not very many, and the opposition really, really crushed them. The senior directors of the campaign, and the way that the campaign was run, was basically from hiding. They were either in exile, they were in prison. Those of them that were in hiding would come out occasionally. On the 20th of March, the dictatorship of Nicolás Maduro decided, let's go after her top campaign advisors. And so they issued arrest warrants and started hunting them throughout the country, 10 of them. 2 of them became prisoners at that moment, and they've been in prison since the 20th of March of last year in a torture center called El Helicoide. 2 of them left the country. And 6 of them ran to the Argentinian embassy where they sought asylum, and they were granted asylum. And from that embassy, they ran the campaign. The entire campaign was run from the Argentinian embassy in Caracas. So the 29th of July comes last year, and it's a crushing victory. Immediately, multiple governments in Latin America said, we do not recognize Nicolás Maduro as having won. We've seen the bill of record. Clearly, the opposition won the election. And what does Maduro do? He says, okay, this is a great opportunity. And he kicked out many of these diplomats and embassies. They were told, we no longer want relations with you. And to the Argentines, he said, you have 72 hours to vacate Venezuela, and you no longer have diplomatic protection, which means the 6 people that were stuck in the embassy were now going to be his hostages. He was going to control them, which meant that her team, the team for media relations, the team that handles everything having to do with the new government-elect, was going to be in the hands of Maduro. And so the embassy was under siege. They surrounded the house. They cut the electricity while the Argentine diplomats were still there in full violation of the Vienna Convention. The Argentine diplomats leave. It's 12 hours before the deadline. And Javier Milei, the president of Argentina, called the president of Brazil, Lula. And Lula, of course, in Brazil, recognized Maduro, in great part, of course, because Brazil, which is a democracy, and we do not really focus on democracies, yet Lula has so many corrupt business deals with Maduro and has become so incredibly rich, him and his family. But we're not here to criticize a democracy or talk about Lula's crimes. So, at the last moment, 12 hours before, Argentina asks Brazil, can you take over our embassy? And so a Brazilian flag is then driven to the Argentine embassy. Eventually, it's hoisted above the embassy, and now the Argentine embassy is part of Brazil. That's on the 1st of August. 6 campaign people still inside, no one else. Well, just a couple of weeks ago, the second most surveilled and watched and guarded building in all of Venezuela, other than the presidential palace, the 6 hostages escaped right under the noses of Maduro's security apparatus. And we are so privileged and so happy that one of those people that escaped has traveled to Norway, and he is here with us now. And he is going to give you a sense of what it was like and the struggle and what it means that they were able to accomplish this. Please welcome Pedro Urruchurtu.
Thank you so much. Less than 1 month ago, I was a hostage in an embassy with other colleagues. Why a hostage? Because that's the way the criminal regime works in Venezuela, a country with more than 1,000 political prisoners, kidnapped by the tyranny. What was our crime? Of course, being the close team of the leader of the opposition, Maria Corina Machado, and the president-elect, Edmundo González Urrutia, managing a campaign and winning an election. Of course, the biggest crime for a tyranny. When we decided to request protection to the Argentine embassy in Caracas, we did it thinking it would be a safe place. We never thought it could become a hell and or prison. The embassy was the place in which the campaign of the July 28th election was conceived and where the presidential election was won. All the main areas of the campaign was there, including the management of the campaign, but also the communications, the political office, the electoral office, and the international affairs office. But also, and here you can see, for example, meetings with the presidential candidate. This poster of Edmundo González Urrutia, which Maria Corina used during the campaign, was used by her traveling around the country, was designed in the embassy, for example. We had some meetings with the candidate, with the chief of campaign, etc., etc., etc. That was our work. That was our crime. But also, this embassy turned into our prison because the regime did not accept our victory. We won using their unfair rules, and we won with more than 70% of the votes. That's why we got permanently surrounded by the political police using assault rifles, as you can see. with snipples. And in this case, in the middle, this part of the screen, you can see these assault rifles. In this moment, this was last December, we realized that the regime was planning to kill us if needed. We realized in that moment that our lives were in real risk. Since then, we were in a diplomatic prison. Yes, a diplomatic prison. This is a terrible precedent for activists around the world that could see an embassy as a safe place if they are fighting against authoritarian regimes. Why the regime did this against us? Because they had to show their power of repression to the world. Today, they apply a hostages diplomacy with more than 70 foreigners that are kidnapped in the country for more than 25 countries, and they are still kidnapped by the regime. And also apply a hostages policy with all our political prisoners. While the international law and the diplomatic asylum were violated by the regime, our living conditions were worsening. And of course, the regime was thinking what to do with us. Enter to the embassy and take us, or maybe make us surrender. We were scared. We were terrified. We know that the regime could kill us in every moment. We couldn't sleep. Imagine wake up inside Argentina, that in reality is Brazil, but being in Venezuela, with the idea that they are trying to kill you every single day. That were my morning coffees after the nightmare. Yes, coffee and terrorism. That's the mix we live there. But at the end, we decided to resist. We resisted. We resisted during 412 days, 59 weeks, 14 months, with all this context I describe. We faced at least 3 different sieges during our stay there. We lived 5 months without electricity, depending on a fan with a solar panel to charge our phones every single morning. We lived during 5 months without water, using and drinking the water of the ambassador's pool, using pills to clean it, while the regime only allowed 3 minutes of water every 10 days. We did not have refrigerators in the embassy, so our food was rotting. We got scared of running out of food. That was our critical situation. Restrictions of visits, of foods, and medicines. This was our hell in the embassy. But maybe you are asking why I put this parrot at the beginning of my presentation here. The macaws, or guacamayas, as we say in Spanish, are wild parrots that you can easily find in our capital city, Caracas. They are not only a symbol of freedom and beauty, but also for us was a daily inspiration. And don't worry, we never ate them. Please. During months, these guacamayas, or macaws, flew over us in the embassy, until one day, finally, they decided to come down, becoming these birds the only visits we got in our last months of captivity. They appear as a symbol of trust and freedom. As you can see, they put in our shoulders, in our arms. But also, we identify these guacamayas as a signal from the universe that for us, it was time to fly. That's why a few weeks ago, we decided to escape. through an international rescue operation involving allies of democracy, and we named this plan Operación Wakamaya, or Operación Macaw, honoring these inspiring animals that visited us during many weeks. As you can imagine, I cannot reveal details yet about this operation because there are many actors involved and there are many processes going on in our country. But it's an operation that is taking place in Venezuela that started not with us and is not finishing with us as well. But being here confirmed its success. But most important, proof that the regime is defeatable and that they are weaker than they appear. We escaped while they were watching us. We did it in their faces. Even we did it having in one side of the embassy, the Russian embassy, and in the other side of the embassy, the North Korean embassy. It's crazy, but we did it. This is the first time I show this picture. It's the first time it's public. It was taken, I think, in the 3rd month of our asylum by a photographer in a street next to the embassy. We were convinced that we were a team made to resist. Nothing could break us during all this time. We decided to move forward because it was the right thing to do. Freedom is essentially a matter of dignity and requires determination and courage. That makes us free in soul and mind, even when you don't have physical freedom. Of course, after we escaped, the wave of repression has increased as a response from the regime because this was a humiliating defeat to them. In recent hours, at least 100 people have been detained, including the forced disappearance of one of the key leaders of the opposition, Juan Pablo Guanipa, and many other people that are still missing. That's why only a strong leadership, a strong coordination, and courage and determination can defeat a criminal regime like the one we are facing and like the one we defeated with this operation. We don't see our liberation and freedom as a gift, but as a commitment and a huge responsibility. Because we know that we only will be fully free when our people is liberated and when our country is liberated as well. But we will do it. We did it. We did it once. We did it twice. And we will do it again. I'm here after flying from the US, after meeting Secretary Rubio, as a strong signal and a clear commitment that we will continue coordinating all the possible efforts until Venezuela recovers its freedom in all possible ways. At the end, this is our main commitment and our main mission, and it's our clear commitment with all the Venezuelan people that still trusting us. So this is until the very end. This is hasta el final. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.